Welcome to ReThink You, bringing you ideas, inspiration, and motivation to start living the life you were created to live. Here is your host, author, trainer, speaker, and coach, and founder of ReThink You, Kim Levings.
Well, hello, and welcome back to the ReThink You podcast. I hope you've been enjoying just some great episodes that we've had lately. And today, again, I'm looking forward to bringing you a new guest. His name is Vincent Infante. He goes by Vin. And, Vin is a board certified life coach and a licensed psychotherapist. And most recently, his past job was a firefighter with the Fire Department of New York. And, from that experience, Vin gained a deep understanding of what it really means to be part of New York's bravest. And he dedicated his time to the city of New York, along with other first responders dealing with the coronavirus pandemic of 2020, which we're still in here in 2021. Vin is also a certified personal trainer. And this combination of experience, which I found fascinating when I heard Vin speaking on a summit and invited him to be interviewed on the podcast, because this sort of varied experience has supported his quest to connect with and create lasting change in the lives of people through implementing CBT, which is, he's going to explain what that is, developing routines and implementing structured goal orientation to life. Vin's unique blend of experience and competence positions him uniquely in his field since leaving the fire department, where he has dedicated himself to leading his coaching company and providing transformational experiences to his clients. So, Vincent, welcome to the ReThink You podcast. It sounds to me like you've but you've chosen to reinvent yourself and do a pivot on yourself a few times. And many times people get off track in life because they try to be everything that others expect them to be, and losing touch with your self-image and your self-worth. So start us off by telling us some of your journey and what led to these interesting redirections.
Sure. Sounds good. So it definitely does seem like I've done a lot in life. I've had 3 careers so far, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to stay in the one I'm in now. So that's good. My life has kind of always been me trying to find my way. I've struggled a lot with my own self-image, my own confidence, my own ability to connect to myself. But I always knew I wanted to help people. Actually, that's not entirely true. There was one point in my life when I was getting bullied really bad, and I had such low self-esteem and such low confidence. And I also felt that I was receiving so much pain from other people that there was a time in my life as I was going to try and become a therapist, and I was going through school, and I absolutely just hated people. And it was ironic, right? You're going to become a therapist and you hate people. So how does that work out? And so for me, that was really something that I had to work through in order to get more into my journey of wanting to help people and wanting to still continue helping people, because I always was. I started at 18 as a mental health worker in a hospital, and I started personal training at 18 as I was going to get my bachelor's in psychology. And then I got my master's in social work. And from there, I had started my journey as a psychotherapist, and I began working in all different types of settings. I was in hospitals, clinics, inpatient units, homeless shelters, Department of Education. I pretty much worked everywhere in the mental health sector. I've even done some nonprofit work. So I've had this really, really long journey of just trying to find my right fit. I always make jokes, like when I tell people, if you look at my resume, I've only stayed everywhere for a year. And why is that? Well, because I spent so much time really just trying to find what was right for me. And that's really not easy. I thought it was. I thought ever since I was a kid, I said I was going to be a therapist, and I grew up, and then I was like, well, now I'm a therapist. What do I do? And so there's so many options out there. And I really tried to get a sample of everything. My story really did start when I was younger, and I was getting bullied, and I had all this trouble at home and in school. And that made me have to learn how to accept myself. That when nobody else was willing to accept me, and I wasn't even willing to accept me, I created this alter ego and this alternate persona. And his name was Vincenzo, and I'm Vincent. And so as I lived in this different persona, I started achieving much more of my personal goals, like have some friends, get a girlfriend, be liked by people. But the reality was I still wasn't really accepting myself, and I wasn't really dealing with my pain. So it was actually around the time that I graduated with my master's at 23 that I kind of had this reprieve where I basically just quit both of my jobs. I was no longer a mental health worker or a trainer. And then I decided to really just give myself some time. I had money saved up in the bank, and I decided to live off that for a bit. And I kept trying to figure out, well, what's going to make me happy? And I was just going out every night and doing all these different things to try and get myself to a place where I could accept me and find some happiness. But I think one of the biggest things was that I still didn't fully accept me. And so there was this moment when I was standing there and I was kind of staring in the mirror in the bathroom in my parents' house. And I was just staring at myself, and I looked at me, and I was so frustrated, right? And people achieve change when they get to this point where they're just so sick and tired of being sick and tired, and they're sick of the frustration, and they're sick of everything. And I guess I was finally at that point because I never felt so much pain until, like, I guess maybe that moment. And when I looked at myself in that complete frustration, and I kind of just realized what it was. It was one of those Hallmark movie moments. You could probably tune in and see it on your local network. And I just said to myself, I'm like, you're Vincent. And that was the first time in about 7 years that I said my own name, because I stopped calling myself Vincent when I was 18. And now we're 23, right? So there was this just big moment of me stepping into myself, of who I don't want to say was, but who I am, right? And that was what I was trying to hide and run away from. And I guess in that moment, everything felt right, and I felt more at peace with myself. And that allowed me to then go on this journey of not only self-discovery, but self-love and loving other people again. This is where my passion to really help people, I don't want to say it was ever gone, but it was lit to a whole nother degree. In the fire department, you have all different degrees of fires. So I would say maybe this turned into a second alarm fire, and all of a sudden it was raging again, and we were ready to go. We were ready to start helping people. And by we, I mean me.
That's a great story. And Vincent, I just actually want to pause on that for a moment, because that's powerful. Many people who go through the unfortunate experience of being bullied and experiencing those emotional health challenges as a teenager, they're faced with a choice in life, and you chose the right path. You chose the path of saying, how can I use this to reinvent myself? Even if you had to assume that temporary ID for a while and call yourself Vincenzo, and then get to that mirror moment. Thank you for sharing that, because that was obviously a pivotal point. But some things that you said in there too, I want to draw attention to, just the fact that you were able to save money to take that gap, to think about what you wanted to do in life, was also an indication of a choice that was unusual. So what do you think in your origin story? I mean, tell us a little bit about what gave you that level of self-awareness and intelligence about being able to make such good choices. What do you attribute that to? I mean, was it parental, or do you think it was just part of who you were?
That's a good question. Never had that question asked. So I think it was a combination. Now, my father, he's a psychotherapist, and he had always told me, if you want to be a good therapist, any therapist that's worth their degree actually has gone to therapy themselves. So he told me two things. He told me that, and he also told me, if you want to be a good therapist, you have to put yourself in the hardest situations so that you can help anyone. And that's why I decided to go work in inpatient units and all these other things. But I think from those pieces of advice that my dad gave me, I had started therapy relatively young. Now, as I was also somebody who was bullied relatively for my whole life, I could go back to probably as early as even maybe second, third grade. And I had always been someone who was sitting in the guidance counselor's office. If anyone's familiar with those kids that, during lunch, why are they sitting in the guidance counselor's office eating, is because, well, I can't speak for everyone. I didn't fit in. So I would spend a lot of time with guidance counselors, and I wasn't really getting therapy, but, I was seeing the guidance counselor and talking about how I felt and this, that. And I guess when I got older and I was about 18, I started with an actual therapist. And then I went with them until I was about 23. And then I had that moment in the mirror, and I felt very clear on what I needed to do. And I did the very classic. I walked into my therapist's office and I said, "Today's our last day and I'm not coming back." And so he was like, "Wow, well, all right." And I know what that is, because all right, I'm a therapist now. Now that I've been in the field for a while, I've had a lot of people do that to me. But for me, it was a moment of, I need to just really get reintroduced to me. My therapist at one point tried to put me on medication for depression and anxiety. I refused. I told him where he could stick the bottle, and I decided I could do this on my own. And I decided, I guess, from the self work and the retrospect, the introspection, and also I learned a lot in college. Psychology. Not only did I do it because I wanted to become a therapist, I absolutely love it. I would spend days and ends just researching on my own. I was joining websites that would give me no accreditation towards my degree, but they offer the psychological courses, and I started self-educating on positive psychology and all these different things. And as I was more curious, I guess I just learned a lot more. And I think it was very much a combination of, inner work, self-reflection, learning from school. And that's really where my, desire to take a break, in a sense, was to really find me. But it was also a part of, I felt so stuck and didn't really know what I wanted. And I knew that something had to change. So I had money in the bank, and I was like, you know what? I kind of, in a sense, have a little bit of a luxury. I could take some time off. I took about, I want to say maybe 4 or 5 months. I took about 4 or 5 months off, just getting in touch with myself. I graduated in May, so it was prime time because summer was coming up. And so I decided, oh, this is going to be great. I started going out. I went hiking. I love hiking. I'm a big fan of nature. And I started really just getting in touch with myself. I text friends on a Wednesday afternoon. They're like, "Hey, how's it going?" They're like, "Oh, I'm busy in work." And I'm like, "Cool." Here, send them a picture of me on top of a mountain. They were like, "You're a jerk," right? and so I was just having a little fun, and really getting in touch, doing honestly whatever I wanted. I didn't go crazy, luckily. I didn't get into anything bad or any, wild drugs or any bad news. I just spent a lot of time getting in touch with myself. And I think after I said my name and I got back in touch with accepting me, it was really just now, like you kind of said, pivoting and almost, in a sense, reinventing myself, because I actually had to meet myself again. Like, it was almost like a brand new introduction. Like, the first day, shake hands. "Hi, I'm Vin. Nice to meet you." And start rebuilding that aspect of me.
Interesting. Yeah, as I said, just some great choices in there. And I think that, as you said, the importance of getting back in touch with ourselves at those pivot points is important too, because we change and life changes. But around that, there's normally those common sets of strengths and values and things that matter most to us. As you reflect back on your story, Vince, and I know that, as I said, by my standards, you're still young. So it just blows me away that you've done as much as you have in the years since you left school and were no longer bullied. And it's interesting too, because people often, their greatest strength comes out of their greatest challenge. So you wanting to help people having come from a place of needing help. So that's important too. But what would you say are some of your abilities and strengths that you've learned to actually leverage and build on in your life?
Mm. Yeah, so I've used a lot of CBT because that was what I was classically trained as, in a sense. So that's cognitive behavioral therapy. I also used to specialize in that as a therapist. And that's honestly one of the higher forms of talk therapy that helps with anxiety and depression. And it's a great form for those because what it does is it really gets you to challenge your thoughts. A lot of the times, most of the time, anxiety is really your anticipation of a future outcome that you have no idea what it is, right? So if you get anxious about, for me, let's go to personal experience. If I get anxious about asking out a girl, right? The issue was never that the girl rejected me. The issue was the possibility of her rejecting me, or even worse, I get there in front of her and I don't know what to say. And so for me, that was one of my hugest struggles, because as somebody who had no confidence and was always bullied, my first girlfriend wasn't until I was 19. So that for me was the biggest anxiety provoking, ever moment of my life, because now I see this girl, I'm interested in her, and it's like, what if I don't know what to say? What if she rejects me? What if I get there and I say something stupid? What if I get there and I have nothing to say at all? What if the conversation goes great and I mess it up? What if there's no conversation? What if it's awkward? What if it's weird? What if she wants to reject me before I even get there? What if she looks at me weird? An anxious person will have 10 million scenarios in their head before the scenarios even come close to happening. All of that I just said was a fraction of what it would be in my head while I'm still across the bar, not even made eye contact with the girl yet. And so this is what winds up happening in the mind of an anxious person. Now, CBT is awesome for that because you could challenge those thoughts. Again, it also, a part of this too is people willing to be open to the process, right? Being open to challenging these thoughts and being okay to put yourself in a little bit of an uncomfortable situation. Because one of the biggest things I've learned in my time is that when we try to avoid pain, as I did when I was getting bullied, or we try to avoid fear, anxiety, depression, whatever it is, we wind up making it worse because it's just something we keep to the side. We know it's there, but we're not really willing to acknowledge it. And that doesn't help. So with CBT, it's like, okay, let's acknowledge your anxiety. Let's let you be anxious. Let's go into it. Okay, you get there and you say hi and she gives you like a ugh, like that, like a look like ugh. And all of a sudden you feel rejected. Now what? Well, I don't know, right? And so we just challenge people to kind of start going into it. Like, well, what's the worst that can really happen? Let's think of a different scenario. So you could do that, or you could do a different one where you could restructure the thought. And you could just say, okay, well, instead of you thinking she's going to reject you, why don't you think that she's already accepted it? Why don't you think that she's already interested in you and she wants to go out on a date with you? And so there's a bunch of different techniques. It also varies based on the person. For me, the thing that helped me was more to just go into she already said yes. She's already going out on a date with me. I already got this girl. She's in love with me. It's good. We're great. And, it would give me that level of confidence to start trying to talk to this girl. And it would give me that level of feeling more certain and sure, because as humans, we, if you look at Maslow's needs, Maslow's hierarchy, we all have this level of need for some certainty, right? And certainty isn't just housing, food, water. It's also something that could be expanded to your mindset. When you don't have certainty, right? Because that's what anxiety is it's so much uncertainty, and it fears and it feeds on us and rolls and gets bigger and stronger. When you could create a little level of certainty in your mindset, you could start alleviating anxiety. So for me, it was really learning even visualization techniques in that part, right? The CBT can come into a spot. I combine a lot of stuff, so I know I'm going into this weird rabbit hole, but it can bring you into a spot where you visualize, and then you could see something kind of before it happens. Like, okay, for me, that girl, she made eye contact. She's clearly interested. I'm going to have no problem going to talk to her, and boom. And now if you get rejected, yeah, it sucks, but you had that confidence to actually go up there. And so you could kind of use that technique over and over, and then you just work with whatever the outcome is or the result is. But that's the biggest part. For me, getting over anxiety is not focusing on the what can happen. It's more of what do I believe is going to happen, or what do I believe in my mind is already happening. And then that's how you start changing that up a little.
Right. It's reframing the narrative and forcing your brain or to engage a different part of your brain, similar to the work that I do, in that, as you said, when people are in the state of anxiety, they're not thinking clearly and they get stuck in that whirlwind driven by the limbic system and the amygdala rather than thinking with the frontal cortex. So making those choices. And obviously your background in therapy has really helped. And it's just wonderful because so many people still get the impression of therapists being these old croaky professors with glasses. So I think that you completely changed that paradigm, which is a good thing. And like you, when I started out in my field, I also came on the heels of therapy, having told my therapist I was done and I was moving on, and I had the ability to reframe my narrative. So I know that you and I share much of that thinking. But now if we turn our attention just in terms of your values and what you stand for, What are the things most meaningful for you, Vin, in your life, and how are you living those out right now? And then I want to come back also to your firefighter experience. So let's just talk about values first, and then we'll go back to the career journey.
Sure. I think, it's funny that you bring that up, that I'm changing a bit of the stigma. I actually find that to be one of my biggest values. When people used to walk in, now, when I worked in a private practice, that was the last formal therapeutic setting I worked at. People would walk in and they would see me standing there. Now, for the people who aren't watching this on video, I have a beard, I have tattoos, I work out, I'm 29 years old. So I would confuse people. They would walk in and they'd be like, "You're my therapist?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, why? Who are you expecting?" "I don't know, some 70-year-old guy who's gonna fall asleep on me, probably already half asleep, bald, no hair, maybe a little chubby, maybe a little skinny." And so I love the idea of being that therapist, right? And being that person that's actually changing the way people view therapy, because I find one of my biggest values, I did like a value assessment. One of my biggest values is actually humor. And I use a lot of comedy in session even. And I make people laugh all the time. That's one of my biggest ways to get people to open up quickly. I've had clients have amazing experiences. I've had clients that I found a way how they were crying because somebody just passed away. And literally in 2, 3 minutes, I had them laughing. And for me, I think that's one of the biggest ways that I've used therapy. And honestly, if I had to tie it into my sad boy little self, to some degree, maybe the reason I use humor so much is because I felt a lot of pain and I want people to be happy. I want people to feel happiness and joy. And realistically, if you could get someone to laugh, that's a moment of joy, right? You're not going to laugh if you're miserable and sad and hating the world. You're going to laugh if you feel some sort of joy and happiness. And so for me, humor is a big value. Changing the way people view therapy, and now what I do coaching, I want people to see that as something different. I don't want people to continue to have this terrible association of, "I'm crazy, that's why I'm going to therapy." Like, that's not what it is at all. And people still to this day have that stigma. I've run across plenty of people that are like, "I don't want to do coaching," or, "I don't need therapy. I'm not crazy. I'm not this. I'm not that." And then, you tell them, "Well, did you know almost every millionaire, billionaire, and all the most successful people in the world have had a coach, someone to help guide them and get them through this life?" Because that's what it is. I've had my own. I've still had my own. I still invest in myself daily, weekly, monthly. There's almost all the money I get paid, I throw back into me because it's so important. And I feel like a part of that is when people could see me, and see that I'm very different than your typical therapist. They might think of it a little differently. And how passionate I am, I try to talk about how amazing it is, because you take your life to new heights, new levels. And even if you don't, even if you're just someone who wants to live in a 9 to 5, and I've had clients tell me that, "Vin, I don't want to be a business owner. I don't want to do the entrepreneur stuff. I just like the 9 to 5 life." Okay, great. How do you find more joy and happiness in your 9 to 5 life? Because that's possible too. It's really, that's a big part of my passion, just getting people to overcome this stigma, getting people to have fun and enjoy it. That's why I make people laugh. I want people to come to my session and laugh, because when you do, you're enjoying it. And oh my God, do people need to learn to enjoy this?
It's so true. And I think that in many ways, as you said, it also changes the vibrations, because when you make people laugh about themselves, it automatically switches them into a different part of their brain where they are open to more joy and possibilities. So I love that, humor and changing the paradigms, and in some cases, the stigma attached to therapy. What else would you say are some of your core values that get you up every day, Vin?
Mm. My core values, I think, are also a big part of determination, discipline, grit. I find that these have been big foundations for my life. I'm not going to sit here and say I have been this super regimented, disciplined person to get where I am, because I have been someone who has struggled a lot, even with my own mental game. I've probably wanted to quit almost everything I've ever achieved, honestly. And I find myself time and time again getting up against the wall or the wire, whatever terminology people want to use, and always being on the cusp of, I'm going to quit this. This sucks. It's hard. I hate it. I don't want to do it anymore, and I'm done. And I did that with grad school. I did that with the fire department. I did that with my coaching career. I've done it with every hard thing I've ever had to do in life. And I think that's so important to say, because especially today with social media, everyone only sees success. Everyone always sees, Gary Vaynerchuk owning his multi-million-dollar companies. You see Tony Robbins owning his multi-billion-dollar producing company. Like, we always see everybody's success. And I think a lot of the times, the biggest thing, even for me as an entrepreneur, was learning how hard this stuff is, and how as I talk to more and more entrepreneurs, I'm able to understand everybody wants to quit. And that's such a great feeling, because it's about really not going into it, but understanding it's there, understanding that it's hardship, and understanding how you get through it. So I think one of my biggest things is really discipline and grit, because I've had to use that so much in my life to overcome bullying, to overcome wanting to quit grad school, to overcome wanting to quit the fire department, to overcome wanting to quit the my therapy, and then overcoming wanting to quit my coaching career. I think it goes to say that you're going to have so many barriers in life. Things are going to be so hard at some points, but when you have the discipline and the grit, and you have a strong enough why, you never really do quit. You might get to the edge of the cliff, and you might be looking down and saying like, wow, it must be nice to just jump off today. But even if you dangle your foot over, and you have good enough discipline, good enough grit, and a great enough why, you're never going to take that leap to just go over the cliff and end it. In fact, you're going to turn around and be like, well, I scared the heck out of myself. Now I'm ready to continue with my day.
Right. I know. I shared a quote with my daughter some time back that said, it's okay to want to quit, just don't.
Mm.
And as you said, it's a reality that anyone who's going through a challenge gets to those moments that they want to quit. And you're right, it takes discipline and determination. And there's a reason there's such a small percentage of successful people in life, because it does take hard work and that commitment. And often the fastest path to success is building on your strengths. So now, as promised, I wanted to go back a step and say, so when you quit your private practice as a therapist, and you went back out, you went to the fire department. So talk to us about that. What was that dream that you were chasing, and what was the experience like working with the New York Fire Department?
Yeah. So when I was a kid, I'll preface it with this. When I was a child, people always asked me, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I always said, I want to be a therapist and a firefighter. And that was like a 5-year-old saying that. So people are always confused, like, where does this 5-year-old learn how to say therapist and why, and firefighter? And so then people would try and combine it. Oh, you're going to be a therapist in the fire department? I say, no, I'm doing both. And they'd be like, okay, because that sounds like a weird dream for a little kid to have. And the funny part is, I did it. I did it, 5 to 29. I did it 24 years later. And so I always wanted to be a therapist because that was my dad. That's my dad's career and profession, and I wanted to follow in his footsteps. I wanted to be a firefighter for myself, because who doesn't admire a firefighter? Especially in New York, firefighter is the job to have. It's a great job. It's an amazing job. It's an amazing experience. And so I had this very hard decision I had to make. I tried to get into the fire. Okay, here's a great example of not wanting to quit, right? Not giving up. I tried to get into the fire department twice. The first time I took a written test and I got a 93. And you might think that's high, but it's really not, because there's 80,000 people that take the fire exam. It comes out once every 4 years. If you get a 93, you're going to be number almost 20,000 on the exam listing. And to put that in context is, every 4 years, they only hire about 4,000 to 5,000 firefighters. So I was number 18,000 the first time. My brother actually got 102. And now I was angry at my brother because he took my childhood dream from me. But in the scheme of things, I always look at it like everything's supposed to work out the way it does. Because had I got a high enough score, I would have dropped out of my master's program, because I had a lot of trouble going through my master's and I hated it. And B, they called the class that my brother was in literally a year into my master's program. So if that was me, I would have taken the job, left my master's program, and never became a therapist. And I would have never had any of the experiences that I had. All the amazing things and all the amazing people I met would have never existed. And I would have never finished my master's. So I would have never become a therapist. Now, that to me, I couldn't understand it at the time because I was so pissed and so angry and this, that, because it was my dream. And I also hated what I was doing. So I was like, I wanted to get into that. Unfortunately, I bit the bullet. It was what it was. That was reality. I had to wait another couple of years and then you take the test again. So now the second time I took it, I got 103. Now, it is a very long process. With that 103 on the exam, I was number 1217. So I was going to be in the first or second class. I got, very big difference from 20,000, right? And so I was now situated at a private practice. I was working there for a year. This one I actually was going to stick with. This wasn't one of the 1-year wonder on my resume. This one I did love. And I had a big caseload. I had 40 people and I absolutely loved what I was doing. This was exactly where I wanted to be in life. I always said I want to be in a private practice doing psychotherapy. And after years of trying to find my fit, I finally found the right place with the right clientele and the staff was amazing and I loved it. And then I got the congratulations letter that I was going to be called for the fire department. And it was starting in October. Now I got this congratulations letter in August. And so this was a really hard choice for me because I was living one childhood dream. I had the opportunity for the other one. I absolutely loved what I did. I had a huge caseload and maybe this is the folly of all therapists. I have been extremely attached to not wanting to leave my clients. This is my work. This is my passion. I love these people. I'm going to help them. I can't imagine doing anything else. But then I also couldn't imagine not being a firefighter. So I kind of even let this decision go down to the wire. I think I stayed and didn't even tell my clients I was leaving until the absolute almost last minute, right? You still have to give notice to clients. You can't just leave on them. That'd be horrible. So I gave them about a month and a half or 2-month notice. I think I told them probably come around September and the fire department started in November or October. And so I had to really kind of just sit on it for a bit and really decide. And I waited out and I said, this is going to be a once in a lifetime thing because there's also a rule in the New York City Fire Department. You can't take the test or become a firefighter after the age of 29. So you age out and you only get essentially 2 shots. So, because, you could take the test twice, it's 8 years total between the tests, right? So I said, okay, I need to do this. I need to at least see what it's like. I need to go. I need to live out my dream. I can't not do it. And so I wound up taking it and I joined the fire department and we started the academy, and the academy was 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. You're up at about, depending on the day, you're either up at 3:30 a.m. or 4 a.m. and you have to be there at 5:30 or 6. And then it goes until 6 or 7 p.m. sometimes. It really depends. You remember when you were in school and the teacher said the bell doesn't dismiss you, I do? Well, we had drill instructors there and the drill instructors said the end of the day doesn't dismiss you, we do. So if the drill instructor was mad that day, you could count on being there kind of late. And so as I went through this experience 5 days a week, I also had made a promise to myself, and I was held accountable by my girlfriend who had said, if you're really going to do this, your whole excuse for not starting your business as a therapist is because you had no time. So on Saturdays and Sundays, I was doing my coaching business. So I was working 7 days a week. I don't know, 5:30 a.m. to 6-7 p.m. Monday to Friday. And then on the weekends, I would have 8 to 10 coaching clients. So I don't know, do the math, maybe somewhere between 70, 80 hour work weeks. and I was just destroyed. I was struggling so much to get through the fire department. It was physically intensive. It was mentally exhausting. You know, they tested you. It was like going through boot camp, but getting to go home at the end of the day. And I'm not trying to step on any military people's toes. That's what the guys that were from the military were telling me. And so, you know, we had drill instructors. It was a paramilitary organization. We had to march and stand at attention, all the good stuff. So it was a very, very hard and challenging experience. And it definitely led me to levels of burnout. You know, it led a lot of people to levels of burnout, but it was the most amazing experience of my life. I actually say the only reason I have what it takes, or even half the strength I have to have started my business and become an entrepreneur, is purely because of the fact that the fire department pushed me through my limits. Like, they put you towards your limits and then through it. It was the most amazing and strength building experience of my life, better than anything I've ever gone through. And the reason they train you this way is because when you're a firefighter, somebody's calling you on their worst day. You don't have the option to have a bad day. You don't have the option to hit your limit, but you better get real creative, real quick, and come up with a way to save somebody's life or defend the property of New York through, you know, putting out a big fire. So it was amazing.
Wow. And that goes to how, you know, you talk about grit and resilience and discipline and determination. Obviously, those were a lot of your learnings from that experience, and still being able to take on coaching clients. So, you know, good for your girlfriend for pushing you about keeping your commitments to both dreams. And so that kind of brings us to what you're doing now. So when you left the fire department, you know, what made you decide to leave? And you didn't go back into private practice, but you've now sort of 100% focused on your coaching practice. So talk to us a little about what you're doing right now, Vin.
Sure. So yeah, I essentially was in the fire department up until October. I was in it throughout the whole Corona pandemic. Obviously, we still got a little bit of it going on, but it was, you know, in the heavy of it. They deployed us early from the academy, which is also something that hasn't happened since 9/11. And they really needed us. So they got us out there, and I was working through it. And as I was working through it, I was also continuing to build my coaching business. And I transitioned. I got certified under Tony Robbins' program to become a life coach. And I had really taken that coaching of my own business to the next level. And so I started growing it, and I started getting a big clientele, and I started putting in 20, 30-hour weeks. I had just thriving on the amount of clients I was getting. And that made it very difficult in a sense to do both jobs, because the fire department also requires 100% commitment. You know, if somebody can't make it, if something happens, if there's a problem, they're going to be looking to you to come in and help. And obviously that's not a problem. You know, more than happy to do that. But it became a little bit of a conflict when I would have, you know, 6, 7, 8 clients scheduled, and then they would say, hey, we need you to come to the house. And I'd be like, I don't know what to do here. And so for me, I felt like I wasn't giving my 100% to honestly either job. And my mom always told me, you know, from a young point when I was a kid, she said, if you're not going to give it your all, it's like you're not doing it at all. And it's a little fun play on words, but she was right. And I started thinking about, if I had to get called for both jobs on one day, which one would I do? You know, if the firehouse called me and I had clients call me, which one would I go to? And honestly, I said my clients. And so I knew, with that truly in my heart, I wasn't in the right place. And I didn't want to disrespect the guys at the firehouse. I didn't want to disrespect the culture. You know at the firehouse, if they need you, you got to go. And I knew I wasn't really living up to that commitment. So it was me being very honest with myself, not wanting to hurt anyone or do anything wrong. And when I had that realization, I said, it's probably not right for me to still be a firefighter and stay in this situation if I know I can't give it my all and I'm not doing the best I can, because I'm not really honoring the house, the guys, or the spirit of the job. And I said, so that's really not right. And that was honestly a hard thing to even say to myself, because I honestly love the job. Being a firefighter was one of the coolest experiences of my life. Like, when you're sitting on the engine and the lights and sirens are going off and you're getting geared up, you're going to a fire, you're going to an EMS call, you are a cowboy. You're a modern day cowboy. Back in the Wild Wild West, they had nothing on this. And it was an amazing adrenaline rush and experience, knowing like we're on our way to help people and this is going to be insane. And I mean, it was really truly an amazing experience. So knowing that I loved it that much and that I was still saying, I think I have to give this up for this other thing, is just how strongly I felt about coaching and how much I love what I do and the work I do with clients and people, and that I couldn't give it up. So I put in my letter of resignation in October, and I went full force into my coaching business, and I haven't really looked back. And now I do executive coaching where I'll work with CEOs. I do regular life coaching where I'll work with, some high profile clients that just want more out of life. And I really do anything I can. I'm trying, to give more motivational talks. And luckily I'm finding amazing people that want to bring me on their podcast for some reason. And and I get to find, other experiences too, where I've given a few small talks to some companies and trying to get the workers all, amped up and help them out. And so I do a little bit of everything, some coaching, consulting, and motivational speaking. And that's kind of what I'm doing now.
That's fabulous. No, and I think what a great story, Vincent. Thanks for sharing that with us today, because I think many people can learn from that, that sometimes we have dreams and we don't go after them. We talk ourselves out of them before we ever go for them. So I think that that's an important takeaway from your story. And I know there've been other great, takeaways in terms of people learning from the things that you went through on how to get your life on track. But as we close out here, I'm sure that there's a lot that you would pass on specifically. So I'm going to ask you to narrow it down to just one or two life learnings or like next steps that perhaps somebody listening to this is saying, well, hey, if Vin can go out there and work for the fire department and run his coaching, what's wrong with me? I've always wanted to be a fill in the blank. What recommendations would you give to people out there who are either stuck, confused, or afraid of taking the next step to being all that they could be in their lives?
I think it comes down to getting in touch with your authentic self, which may not be easy to explain, but I'll give it my best shot. Finding your authentic self is really what will drive you into anything in this world. The only reason I've had the strength to do the things that I've done, as hard and as impossible that it's even felt to me, I would never have guessed I'd be at the point I'm at now. If someone were to tell me, hey, Vin, you're going to be a coach, own your own business, and make what you make, I would say, what are you smoking? I've never done drugs, but can I get some? Because it must be amazing. And just right, a true testament to, we never really understand where we're going to be in life. And it's very, very hard to see things. But when you start building clarity, and this is where I say get in touch with your inner self, where you start building clarity and you have a strong enough why, right? And there's tons of books out there like Finding Your Why and this, that. Those were some of the things that actually really helped me in life. One of them in particular by Simon Sinek, so I recommend that book to people, is really learning how to get in touch with what it is that you want in this world and then seeing it. And all the stuff that people like to make fun of, like the vision boards and the visualization and the sitting in your room and telling yourself that you're going to be this and you're going to be that, it all works. It's real. You have to see it before you can achieve it, but you can only know what you want to achieve when you get in touch with your authentic self. So I would tell people, really go home or turn off the podcast, whatever you're doing, and figure out what you really want in life. And even if it sounds ridiculous, even if you're like, well, I want to own a vape shop, I don't know, it just came to mind, but don't worry about the how, worry about the why. Why do you want to own this vape shop? What do you want to get out of it? How do you want to improve people's lives? What kind of pain do you want to alleviate? What's the joy you'll get from it? What's the joy you'll bring to others? Because those were the biggest questions I had to ask myself when determining what I was going to do in this world. And it all comes back to contribution, knowing why you want to help, how you want to help, what this means to you, why it means something to you, and putting a lot of power and certainty and purpose into it. And once you do, the how will work itself out. You need the why. So that would be my biggest takeaway for somebody. Figure out your biggest why. How are you going to help this world? Don't make anything about you, because contribution is really the greatest gift to this world. And trust me when I say you will be compensated if you really learn how to contribute.
Excellent advice. Thank you so much, Ben. And so true. Figure out your why. We're all here to do something. And unless you're doing something in service to others, it's pretty pointless.
Mhm.
So just some great advice. And I really appreciate you coming on today and sharing your story and also the lessons. I know that the Rethink You podcast listeners could take a lot away from your life story and your lessons. Any final thoughts as we say goodbye?
I just hope everybody, finds something that brings them joy. I hope that everyone really looks to find what will give them peace. And it doesn't have to be an entrepreneur life. You don't have to be a millionaire. You don't have to start your own business. You could be very content with your 9 to 5, or maybe you are someone who wants to be an entrepreneur. But I think realistically, my final words is just find joy in life, find happiness. It will come with whatever you give that meaning to, because there's no set, like, I'll be happy when or if. That's something that we chase, and we actually find less happiness and joy when we're chasing life. So find a life that you can find peace in.
Excellent words indeed. Thanks again, Vin. I hope everybody enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you all again next week.